Hey y'all, I'm excited to talk to you today about how to pick your weights when you are strength training. So this is going to be a little bit of a different video. Normally I have a little bit more of a plan when I film my YouTube videos. I have an outline, but we're kind of going off the cuff today after a conversation that I had this week with a patient. Before we jump into it, I just want to point you to the description of this video to my upcoming free core and pelvic floor class. It is going to be a 1-hour online class on October 18th. When you register for the class, you are getting the link to attend live, but you're also going to receive the recording as soon as we're done with the class straight to your inbox. That class is 3 things that you can start doing now to strengthen your core and pelvic floor. So if that is something that you're interested in, then make sure to check out that link below. But now let's get into it, how to pick your weights when you're strength training. Okay, so this video is for you if you're someone that's new to strength training and you have been looking into and seeing all of the chatter lately about how strength training will give you that toned look that you desire or that you want. Maybe you're someone that has always worked out, but maybe you've always done more like HIIT style classes or boot camp classes, and now you're just starting to get into progressive overload and what it means to actually like progressively increase your strength and pick up some of those heavier dumbbells, maybe even pick up a barbell. What I find with patients when I'm working with them, because that is something that I really encourage them to do when I'm working with women, I want to teach them what progressive overload is. I want to teach them like, hey, if you have a 30-pound toddler, but the heaviest weight you're picking up in your workouts is a 10-pound dumbbell, then we aren't really preparing your body for everyday life or what your everyday life looks like right now. And that's where injury occurs instead of having that resiliency built into your body because you are progressively overloading. To me, progressively overloading and doing strength training means that you are adding resiliency to your system against injury. So it means that we're learning great movement patterns, we're strengthening those movement patterns, and then we're adding a load to those movement patterns so that then when we use those movement patterns in everyday life to pick up heavy stuff or to just handle our kids if you're a mom, then your body is prepared for it and prepared to do it in a way that keeps you safe and injury and pain-free. So there's 2 things that I want you to think about when you're picking what weights to use when you are progressively overloading. Actually, there's kind of 3 things that I want you to think about. The first one is how to keep your body safe. So this comes with making sure that you know how to appropriately monitor your core, your pelvic floor, and your pressure management when you're lifting heavy or what's considered heavy to you. When we're doing that progressive overload strength training, we should be using weights that actually feel challenging to us. Let's just use a goblet squat as an example, right? So we're holding a dumbbell in a goblet hold position, and maybe your legs are plenty strong enough to do that squat for whatever the reps are that are listed in your workout. But what we also need to be monitoring is your core and your pelvic floor strong enough to handle the pressure that comes with that heavy dumbbell appropriately. So when we really learn how to pay attention to that, then we don't have to be so scared of picking up heavier weights and really challenging our system because we know how to keep your body safe from a lot of the common injuries. And that comes from maybe your legs are strong enough, but is your core strong enough to handle getting up out of the hole of that squat? And then that's what we're really monitoring when we think about not doing weight that is too heavy, not doing weight that is too challenging or that could potentially lead to injury. And when I'm working with women who are strength training for the first time, or they have strength trained for a while, it's not something new to them, but they're coming off of an injury or they're coming off of having pelvic floor dysfunction, or maybe coming out of the first time of being pregnant, labor and delivery, and recovering postpartum. And now we're relearning how to do those things in a way that are safe for their body. Those are 2 different scenarios where first and foremost, we need to learn how heavy is too heavy. Then if you're someone who's new to strength training, we also need to learn how light is too light. So whenever we talk about actually building resiliency and building strength into your system, we have to use weights that are heavy enough to make a change, meaning that if we are doing something that is 8 reps, right? We're squatting for 8 reps. Those last 2 or 3 reps should feel like you have to work hard to complete them. So if you're finishing rep 7, rep 8, and it felt really similar to rep 1 and 2, then we probably need to pick up a heavier weight. And we don't need to be scared to do that because you have learned how to use your core and how to monitor your core and make sure that your core and your pelvic floor and your pressure management system can handle the load. And if that's the case, then we're finding that Goldilocks, right? Not too much and not too little. Too little is not going to make a change. Too much, we're risking injury. But when we know how to find that in-between weight, then we can safely build strength and resiliency into the system, and then we're building up resiliency to injury, resiliency to dysfunction, so that we can live our best mom life, live our best life doing all the activities that we love, playing with our kids, going on hikes, doing hard things, and not worrying so much about injuring ourselves. Okay, so let's go back to how to pick the right weight when you're just learning how to like finally pick up some heavier weights. So it should feel like those last 1, 2, 3 reps are harder. The reps should slow down. So if I'm doing a push-up, right, no matter what version of that push-up is, if I'm challenging my system, then the last 2 or 3 reps shouldn't be as fast as I was able to do the first 1 or 2 reps. I should have to really struggle and work to complete those last few reps. And I also should have to be working hard to keep my core controlling the movement, especially in a push-up. A push-up is like a whole challenge for the core that nobody thinks about because we think of it being a chest and an arm exercise, but it is a big core exercise that a lot of women struggle to get back to when they're first learning to use their core and their abdominal wall correctly. But that's a whole other video. We could do a whole video on that. But take any exercise, for example. We want those last 2 or 3 reps to be slower than the first ones, and they're slower because they're harder. They're slower because we have to have our brain and our mind really locked into what we're doing. So we're also having to pay way more attention to, is my core doing what it's supposed to do? So we're keeping ourselves safe and we're challenging the weight or the load enough to make a change. So those are the balancing of creating that Goldilocks, not too much weight, but enough to make a change, of keeping us safe and also building that resiliency. And that is a talk that, especially lately, I think that's why I just like wanted to film this video off the cuff. I've been having conversations with women as my PT patients because there's a lot of chatter about progressive overload, strength training for women, all of the benefits. And it's really causing a shift away from wanting to do tons of cardio, super high reps with really low weight, HIIT style workouts, all that kind of stuff that women have traditionally been drawn to. There's a big shift going on where we're finally getting more women looking into strength training and what that truly means, which I love. I think that's fantastic. I think we've needed that for a really long time. But then it feels intimidating because it's like, well, what do I do if the dumbbell is heavier than 10 pounds? Like in my Orange Theory class, I've never really needed to pick up more than a 10 or a 15 pound dumbbell. So now how do I make sure I don't hurt myself while I also learn how to strength train? And how do I know when that weight is heavy enough? So that can kind of give you a little bit of a balancing act. And then it's just playing with it. It's just playing with it in the gym and getting used to it, getting used to feeling uncomfortable when the weight is heavy, and also getting used to being in that space where it's uncomfortable, but we're monitoring our core really well, because it's not always about, is it too heavy for your arms or is it too heavy for your legs? I always, especially if you're a female strength training, I always want you to go back to, is it too heavy for your core and your pelvic floor? Because if it is, then we need to back off to keep your body safe and work up. It doesn't mean that you can never do that weight. It just means that we need to work up to that weight in a way that's safe for your body. So all of that brings me back to inviting you to my upcoming free core and pelvic floor class on October 18th 3 things that you can do right now to strengthen your core and your pelvic floor. The basis of that class is learning how to set your body up really well so that your core and your pelvic floor are a lot more automatically supporting you and automatically getting stronger no matter what you're doing, because you're set up to use the muscles appropriately. And that's especially applicable to strength training, whether it's upper body, lower body, or actual core strength training. No matter what it is, you're gonna walk away from that class knowing some of the things of how to set your body up to use your core and your pelvic floor well, so that you just automatically feel more supported from those muscles, especially if you're starting to get into strength training, or you've already been in strength training and you're starting to actually learn, okay, maybe I do need to back off a little bit because that doesn't feel right in my core or feel right in my pelvic floor when I squat that heavy or lift that heavy. I promise to you with this 1-hour class is that we aren't going to just talk about the why. That's what a lot of free classes talk about, is the why you need to know these things. We're actually going to talk about the how and the what. So you are going to learn how to identify these things on your own body and what to do to work on the things that we're going to talk about that will help you feel stronger in your core and your pelvic floor. Again, that class is going to be live on October 18th, but if you are unable to attend a live class on a Friday afternoon, I totally get it. So when you register for that class, you're also going to get sent the replay so that you can watch it on your own time. If you are watching this video past October 18th, I also want you to know that you're going to be able to grab that replay. That's going to actually be the link that you see in the description. If we're past that October 18th date, it's going to be the link for you to watch the replay so that you can also get all of that good juicy core and pelvic floor education. Last but not least, attending the class live, the biggest benefit to coming to that class live is that you're going to have a Q&A section at the end. After I'm done teaching, we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A, so that if you have a burning core and pelvic floor question that you've been dying to ask, or you wish you could talk to a pelvic floor PT about, then you are going to have access to be able to ask that question. So that's going to be the big benefit to coming live. But again, you're going to have access to the recording if you can't come live, or if you're watching this after the October 18th date. So no matter what, choose your own adventure you want to choose. The link is going to be in the description. And if you are just getting into this strength training journey, I want to really encourage you to stick with it. It can feel really intimidating at first, but this course or this free class is going to be a great place for you to start, so that you feel a little bit more confident picking up heavier weights and doing this thing that's really great for your body. It has so many benefits to protecting you against injury and dysfunction. We just want to make sure you're doing it safely. So I want to encourage you to stick with it, and I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next week.